Hello, everyone, and welcome to an Americans for Limited Government live stream. I'm Catherine Mortensen, and Rick Manning is with us today, the president of Americans for Limited Government. And what we want to talk to you about today is something that is really just becoming the topic of the day everywhere, is what is wrong with the global supply chain? And more importantly, what does it mean for you? So, Rick, you have been looking into this and trying to uncover what's going on. So before we get started, why don't we we'll watch a video, a great little 2-minute video that the Wall Street Journal put together to try to make sense of what's happening. And we'll stop it and let Rick sort of give some analysis. So let's get started with the video. And where did my video go? Here we are.
Armada of container ships anchored off the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. So that means there are tens and thousands of containers loaded with everything from apparel to electronics to industrial machinery and parts, all waiting offshore to get unloaded. And there's tens of thousands more boxes on the docks and in Southern California freight yards.
Importers are waiting to pick up their cargo longer than ever before. Containers are sitting on port for an average of 6 days compared to 2 days wait in more normal times.
Okay, Rick, why don't you try to explain to us what's happening? Why are we seeing this backlog there at the port of Los Angeles?
It's a multifaceted problem, but it can be broken down into some basic components. First of all, there is a lot of container ships that are coming to the Port of Long Beach, to the Port of Los Angeles, and it's because China is now ramping up manufacturing, and so a lot of the things that might have come over the course of months have come over the course of weeks. But the reality is this is a problem that we've been observing over a period of time, that's been happening. We've watched it kind of get overflown in slow motion over a course of months. And the Biden administration was aware this was happening over a course of months. We've talked about it on this through Daily Torch a number of times in various different things that we've done. But so when you get down to it, the real problem right now, if you wanted to take one thing and say this is the problem is that the places where the containers are put, the freight terminals, where the containers are actually offloaded to, they're full. And they're full because there aren't enough trucks and truck drivers to actually drive those containers, pick them up, and take them to their destination, to where they're supposed to go, whether it be in San Bernardino, California, or in Midland, Texas. That's the real crux of the problem, is that there's not enough trucks who are operating in the state of California to meet the needs of the freight industry and the imports that are coming through those ports. And truthfully, that's a problem based strictly on a California state law, which made it so people who drove those trucks could not continue to do business in California.
Okay, so when was this law passed, and what is the law that's causing this shortage of trucks?
The law was passed, and it actually is called AB 5, and AB 5 was a hotly contested piece of legislation that was really going after gig workers, independent contractors. The unions were mad because people were hiring independent contractors to work their own hours, to not really be employees, but to say, okay, well, I'll work when I want to, and as long as I'm getting the job done, you don't really care. Uber, Lyft, think of those kind of contractors as being the kind of the symbol of the gig economy. Well, California decided that, guess what? The unions aren't getting their union dues as a result. This is a way companies are doing to get away from having to hire union drivers. And we're not able to make certain that they're following various standards that we want to have, because if they don't, because they're independent contractors or solo operators, they're not part of a massive company. And they can impose regulations and stuff on companies. It's really harder to do so on, in fact, they can't on individual operators. So what they did instead is they passed AB 5, Assembly Bill 5. It became law in January of 2020. And Assembly Bill 5 effectively forced independent contractors, such as truck drivers, to become either employees of somebody else or to not be able to operate. And it came down as simple as that. So what's it mean? And then so when it affect January 1, 2020. There were court cases filed, and in April of this year, April 2021, the Ninth Circuit of the federal courts decided that they were not going to allow the appeal, the temporary restraining order against the implementation of AB 5 to remain in effect. And as a result of that decision, truck drivers stopped picking stuff up at the ports. And there were a lot fewer truck drivers who were able to do that because it was against the law. And as a result, you have fewer trucks, fewer drivers, fewer companies who are picking up freight from the ports. And so the containers are backing up because California decided that they wanted to basically throw a bone to the unions because these independent operating truck drivers are not unionized and they want them to be unionized. So as a bone to the unions, they said, we're going to destroy commerce across the country and blow up the supply chain. I don't think they meant to do that, but that's the effect. That's what they've done. And now the rest of us are going to feel the brunt of it.
So Anna Maria sent us a comment. She says, this administration needs to be taken out of office. Is there any blame here to be laid at the feet of the Biden administration? What role have they played?
Yes, the Biden administration should have been all over this. It was a most predictable crisis in history. Everybody knew it was going to happen. And the Biden administration, they should have filed an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court, objecting to the case, the Ninth Circuit's allowing the temporary restraining order to end. They should have been all over this because this is about commerce across the country. The reason there's a federal interest is because there's something called the Commerce Clause in the U.S. Constitution. Commerce Clause says that because of that interstate commerce, that the federal government has an interest in that. And so one state can't put tariffs up against another state. What the state of California is effectively doing through this is they're effectively putting a dam on the stream of commerce and only allowing a trickle to go through for the rest of the country. Commerce, which 40% comes through those two ports. 40% of the exports that come into this country, or imports coming into this country, come through those two ports. Port of Long Beach, Port of Los Angeles. And so you're looking at a massive dam that is that's delaying the ability for goods and goods to be delivered across the country. And it's going to get worse. So yeah, they're culpable. They haven't gotten involved. They haven't paid attention. They haven't done anything about it. And oh, by the way, the federal government has complete and total responsibility over the port system. That while they may have various port authorities, the Transportation Department has a specific division that deals with ports, and they have the capacity to do things like if the longshoremen are on strike, they have the capacity. Secretary of Transportation has the capacity to say, no, longshoremen, you cannot be on strike because you're destroying our economy. And as a result, they can intervene and essentially settle a strike that fast. So Secretary of Transportation has huge capacity here. Pete Buttigieg is the Secretary of Transportation, but unfortunately he's out on maternity leave.
Rick, we just got another comment. Diana wants to know, how will this change, or will it? And Rick, is it possible for you to adjust your camera? So I'm sorry, I can't adjust her comment line to make it lower because it's covering your face.
Ah, okay. Well, I'll move somewhere. I'll move the camera somewhere so it works. Wow, I'm all crooked. This is live TV, folks. It's great. Okay, so hey, Diana. The answer is How will this change or will it? It will change. The public will demand that it changes. There's a couple of things that are happening right now that, like Home Depot, for instance, is actually, I find this hard to believe, and I almost want to reread it, but they're actually using cruise ships to get things that they need to have to sell in their stores, staples that they need, like tools and things for Christmas. They've commissioned cruise ships, which cost about 4 times as much as regular containers, to actually do that. And the reason they're doing that is because cruise ships will fit through the Panama Canal. And so because they can get through the Panama Canal, they can unload them in Texas, they can unload them in Florida, they can unload them in Alabama, they can unload them in Savannah. So they have so it's basically trying to transfer some of their critical needs for their business to other shipping possibilities, whether it's using planes or using other ships that can in fact go through the Panama Canal and avoid the backlog in California. In terms of the reality, though, I think what we're looking at, so that's one. So what some companies are doing, I believe we will have that lawsuit get to the Supreme Court. I think the Biden administration will be compelled to take it up and push as an emergency. I think the Supreme Court will be compelled to take it up as an emergency. And when they do, they're going to find that the state of California does not have the ability to stop commerce from the rest of the country because of a stupid law designed to allow unions to get more members. And ultimately, that's what they're doing. And it is, and those union members should be up in arms about the effect of this.
Rick, let's go back to this Wall Street Journal video and pick that up and see some of their perspective of what's happening. Oops.
The roots of the problem go back to the early months of the pandemic. In the spring of 2020, consumer demand slumped, shipping lines canceled a bunch of their sailings between Asia and North America. So then when consumer demand roared back in the summer of that year, there were thousands of empty containers stuck in the U.S. And by the fall of 2020, the West Coast freight networks were bursting at the seams with trying to handle these surging imports. Add in a wave of COVID-19 cases in Southern California over the fall and winter that caused a labor crunch for actually the docks and the warehouses and the truck drivers that handle the cargo moving through the ports.
All right, Rick. So the Wall Street Journal is saying that this is multifaceted, obviously. There are many factors that have led us to this point, some of them going as far back as just the start of the pandemic. How big a role do you think those factors play?
It's part of it. It's part of it. We'd be having problems regardless of whether AB5 happened or not. AB5 is like the straw that breaks the entire system, the straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of it. But yeah, the fact is that the shipping system, the trade system is an integrated system. Our retail system was based on just-in-time delivery. And so we have this system that's been very finely tuned. And it's like a Ferrari. But when a Ferrari gets out of tune, it is a disaster. And that's what's happened with us. Because of the pandemic, you did have some negative effects. As the Wall Street Journal says, it is true. Fewer imports came in. It is also true that shipping containers, which normally flowed back and forth and are kind of just constantly being used, they've filled it with one thing, shipped somewhere, filled it with something else, shipped back, that those shipping containers were in fact not necessarily in the locations where the manufactured goods were being made, and as a result, there was some challenge related to that. But when you get down to it, and there was a labor shortage. There's absolutely no doubt there was a labor shortage. But the real labor shortage, once again, exists in the fact that there is a law passed that made it so the people who were doing a majority of the trucking in California were no longer allowed to. And so, all that stuff explains why we have these problems around the world, because the entire world's having this problem to some extent. The supply chain is teetering around the world. It's just exacerbated in America because the goods we get from China are coming through a state that doesn't want to actually allow people to get the goods from their ports and out of the state.
Well,
One
Rick,
last thing, I wanted to just go back. You saw that graphic of all those containers. One of the things that the Biden administration is trying to do is they're trying to say you have to work 24/7 on the docks to unload ships. Well, the problem is that the container yards are full, and you can only unload as many ships as you have places to put the containers. That's the hard reality. And because of that, because the container yards are full, that once again, the problem comes to emptying the container yards, which is a trucking problem. It's a rail, there's only so much rail can take. And so that becomes the real problem that really breaks it, because if your container yards are full, you have a full bottle, and you can only get more stuff in the bottle if you empty part of the bottle out. And so it's dependent totally on getting the stuff out of the container yards so new things can be put in.
all right, Rick. Well, that actually leads me to my next question. So the Wall Street Journal is pointing out that this push by the Biden administration for 24/7 port operation is getting off to a slow start, which underscores what you just said. But what is sort of the larger role of trade? Because we have the Port of California, or rather the California ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach together handle more than a third of U.S. container imports. Okay.
Right.
So that tells me that we are importing a lot from China. And I know you have been a big proponent of manufacture in America. Is that something that relates to all this? I'm sure it is, right? Like if we were making more of our own stuff and not relying on China, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. During the Trump administration, one of the purposes of the tariffs on Chinese steel and other things, aluminum, steel, various products, was to try to get our U.S. manufacturers or manufacturers from elsewhere to make things here. Make America Great Again was really about bringing manufacturing and other back to America and reestablishing our manufacturing base. Over the past, since China, we went into the free trade agreement with China, our manufacturing base has been cut in half. And it's in fact, more than that. But so that's a real problem. And one of the positives that may come of this is that the people who are not going to be getting their goods, who are not going to have their shelves stocked, are going to start demanding that goods be made here. The goods that they move the supply chain to somewhere where you don't have to use the Port of Long Beach, and that would be great for American policy. Vice President Kamala Harris continually talks about wanting to get to the root cause of illegal immigration. Well, if she actually wants to get to the root cause of illegal immigration, then what she should be doing is she should be demanding that a lot of these manufacturers manufacture things on the North American continent. If we were manufacturing things in Central America, in Mexico, we would be having jobs that were good paying jobs, and there'd be economic opportunity in the countries of Central America and Mexico.
There's basically an armada of containers.
Sorry about that, Rick. Keep going.
That's okay. The armada of container ships keeps getting in the way. The point is, we don't need an armada of container ships if we're making things here, if we're making things in Central America. And if people are working in Central America and have a hope and opportunity in Central America, then they're not going to be illegally coming here. So if you really want to if Kamala Harris really wants to get down to the basic problem, Kamala Harris should be looking at this situation and saying, this is the exact reason we need manufacturing moved to North America. The free trade agreements with Central America, the free trade agreement with the U.S., Mexico, Canada that President Trump negotiated, the free trade agreement with the Canadian Basin, Caribbean Basin, all served as a perfect opportunity to have things made on this continent, and they can then be trucked from elsewhere, from northward, or from Alabama, or from Mississippi, or from Ohio. And by doing that, we're not dependent upon California not having crazy laws that make it so they're effectively a dam for commerce coming to America.
Let's watch the tail end of this Wall Street Journal video explaining some of the supply chain problems.
Cargo moving through the ports. Because of all this, shoppers may find some products are out of stock, and there's soaring shipping rates. That can also translate into higher price tags if retailers pass these expenses on to consumers. Some experts are advising people to start their holiday shopping early because of all these factors. And the delays in shipping mean that some products may not be on store shelves this month, which is when they would usually be set to arrive.
So, Rick, that gets to the last question of what is the impact for consumers? For those of us just shopping and buying and preparing for the holidays, what will the impact be to us?
We're going to have higher prices, and there's going to be less selection. The Biden administration admitted earlier this week, warned that you might not be able to get the vehicle you want. You might not be able to get the watch you want, but you'll be able to get something sort of like that. And Americans aren't used to having to settle for what they, if I want something, I'm used to being able to get it. And what he's essentially saying is that because of the supply chain disruption, we're going to end up being able to pick, as opposed to having a choice of a number of different kinds of cars, for instance, and different styles of the same car with different colors and different features, we're going to find ourselves in a position where we are having to take the one that happens to be on the lot if we want to buy a new car. That's an example of the kind of choices that are going to end up being made as a result of this. There's a lot of reasons, though, and the labor shortage is a direct result of Biden policy to try to encourage people not to work. Let's just be clear. The Biden administration has made a policy decision that they want people to stay on the sidelines in order to try to force the price of labor up. They've said that out loud. And as a result, a lot of the social welfare spending that's been done under the guise of COVID that encourage people to stay at home, encourage people to not work, have had the exact intended effect. We've had a heck of a time getting people to rejoin the workforce. And as a result of that, yeah, they have labor shortages. Working on a dock is hard work. If you're not used to working, you're probably not the right person for the job. And the idea of working on a dock, unloading container ships, isn't what the average millennial or average Gen Z sat there and said they wanted to do. So the real challenge here is the labor shortage that's been induced by government policies. California has the worst employment policies in the nation, and combined with what Biden's been doing from the federal level. So yeah, there's labor shortages, and they created them.
All right, Rick. Well, thank you for breaking that down for us. We're grateful for your expertise. And if you have any questions, we have just a couple more minutes. I'll leave it up in case somebody wants to weigh in.
Let me talk about one other thing on this. It's in deal with cargo ship fuel, because it's really an interesting aside. As long as we got a couple minutes, I'm going to just do this real quick. The fuel that fuels cargo ships was changed in January of 2020, a worldwide mandate that it be changed went into effect. The cost of the new fuel is much more expensive. The reason for that is the old fuel that was being used was essentially dredge, and as such, it was highly polluting. Before they change, 18 cargo ships, the 18 largest cargo ships in the world, created more air pollution than the entirety of all 80 million cars on this planet. And so the fuel was changed, and it was changed, and the ships were required to retrofit to use a less polluting fuel. And as a result of that, the cost of fuel for cargo ships has gone up. That wasn't really felt in 2020 because of the pandemic, but it is part of the increase in shipping costs that are going to occur in terms of anything we import using cargo ships. And it's a cost that's worthwhile for us to have to bear, because the amount of pollution being, if we truly believe that worldwide pollution, that if you pollute one part of the world, it affects the entire world, you certainly don't want 18 cargo ships contributing more pollution than all cars in the entire world. So it was a good change for the environment. It made sense. The problem with it is it did have right now we're going to feel it, because this is when we're going to see that increase in fuel costs also come into the freight, the cost of freight, the cost of the imported goods. And so we're going to feel that'll just add to the entire price pressure that exists, which is creating the inflation rate which we see today. And it's why we have an inflation rate that's 5.9% right now, and it's going to go up. It's why you're going to pay more for your toys from the store, and you're going to like it because they'll be the only toys on the shelf.
All right. On that happy note, we'll wrap it up for today. Thank you so much, Rick, and thank you all for being a part of Americans for Limited Government and being in this fight for freedom and liberty. If you like what you hear, subscribe to our YouTube channel and check us out on Facebook. We're on Rumble, Twitter. Look for Americans for Limited Government. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you.